Love Your Brain was founded from kind of deep personal experience. So, my brother-in-law, Kevin Pearce, if you're in the snowboarding world, you may have heard his name before. He was a former professional snowboarder about 15 years ago, was training for the Olympics, was projected actually to get a gold on Team USA, and suffered a really significant accident.
Welcome back to Brain, sponsored by Toro and Tides. As we continue our awareness series, now shifting to monthly episodes, our goal remains the same: to bring in leading voices who are advancing recovery, expanding understanding, and improving life for the brain injury community. Today's guest is someone doing exactly that. I'm joined by Kyla Pearce, Senior Director of Programs and Research at the Love Your Brain Foundation. Kyla brings a unique perspective, combining science, research, and practical programming to support individuals navigating life after brain injury. Now, through Love Your Brain, she's helping develop programs that focus not just on recovery, but on identity, well being, and community. And that's what today's conversation is all about: what support really looks like after the initial recovery phase, how programs can impact long term outcomes, and how we can continue to build more complete approach to brain injury care. Kyla, welcome to Brain to Brain.
Thanks so much for having me, Evan.
How are you? How's life going?
I actually just came from a 2-day meditation retreat, so I'm feeling refreshed and rejuvenated, which is such a gift because I have three young kiddos, so life is quite full over here in Vermont.
Holy, yeah, definitely got your hands full, but it seems like we got a little zen back in our life after
A
this
little bit.
retreat.
We found
Good.
a little more balance. That's the hope.
Good. Now, okay, speaking of balance, this is kind of the approach that Love Your Brain does through its daily work. For somebody that's just hearing about y'all's program for the first time, can you give us a better understanding of what goes on?
Yes, happy to. So we offer programming that are rooted in different mind body modalities. So for instance, all of our programming includes mindfulness, includes gentle yoga, brain health nutrition, a focus on psychoeducation or education about resilience, and then also community connection. And we've been around for about 10 years and have kind of built this menu of holistic approaches to supporting mind, body, and spirit, as well as community connection through our own experience, supporting our one of the co-founders, my brother-in-law, who had a traumatic brain injury, as well as through many people in our community who've experienced brain injury and caregivers, explaining how important it is to have a variety of different modalities to support the complexity of brain injury.
Which is huge. And this is not typical medicine, not going to the doctor's office. What y'all do is, I mean, after doing a lot of research on your company, it's very impactful and it's changing lives. Now, I just want to rewind for a quick second. Love Your Brain did not come out of thin air. You talked about your brother-in-law. Can you give a little bit of his backstory and how this progressed to this life-changing company?
Yes, for sure. So, Love Your Brain was founded from kind of deep personal experience. So, my brother-in-law, Kevin Pearce, if you're in the snowboarding world, you may have heard his name before. He was a former professional snowboarder about 15 years ago, was training for the Olympics, was projected actually to get a gold on Team USA, and suffered a really significant accident that led to a near fatal traumatic brain injury. Our family at the time had never heard of a TBI before, so it was a crash course in um, a lot of understanding and new realities around how to support Kevin in the immediate and then also, fortunately, in the long term. So fortunately, he was able to get medevac to the University of Utah, was there for a couple months in acute care, and then eventually transitioned to Craig Hospital in Colorado for longer term neuro rehab. At the time, my now husband, Kevin's brother, Adam Pierce, decided to pause his whole life, so stopped his job to support Kevin and really be by his side during that first year of his navigating what life could and and hopefully would look like, which was really instrumental for Kevin's healing. Kevin, as a athlete, was really motivated by games and competition. So to have his brother there knowing kind of how to push the right buttons, how to motivate him, um, how to really like meet him where he's at, but also push him, allowed Kevin to have a really miraculous we try not to recoveries, and we can talk a little bit about this recovery. And at some point, there's a limit to the kind of value of that word.
Hmm.
But anyways, Kevin, if you met him on the street today, you'd really know. I mean, this is one of the blessings and curses of TBI, but you'd never know that he had had such a significant brain injury. But what really happened was our family learned after leaving the hospital what a lack of ongoing support and services there are really to address the mental, physical, and social impacts of brain injury. So Love Your Brain was founded by Kevin and Adam together to really try and do something different by offering free programming that supports those different dimensions of the healing process. And also, some of you may have heard of, there's a documentary called The Crash Reel that was made. It's an HBO award-winning documentary, so you can see it on most streaming services, but it captured the story of Kevin and our family navigating TBI. And it's been a really, at the early stages of Love Your Brain, so much that documentary brought a lot of visibility in an important way to TBI. And so many people were reaching out to Kevin and asking him, how do you build the kind of resilience that you have that's helped you move through this incredible period of adversity? And from that, Adam and Kevin realized there was a need to kind of create an organization that could bring people together and learn tools and practices so that they in their own communities could continue to heal.
I mean, truly beautiful. And what a fantastic way to take such an unfortunate situation and flip it to turn it into something positive. Of course, we would never have wanted Kevin to get in this accident or for Adam and his family's life to almost be put on hold completely. And you were dating Adam as well, so it really we see the rippling effect through every family member, every friend, and I've seen it with my loved ones, and it's so cool. You know, one of the pillars you mentioned was that community, which I think is instrumental in recovery. And I want to get back to that because you talked about the value of that word, which we can. But the reason I started Toro and Tides and this podcast is to build a community, and y'all are already doing that. You talk about the mindfulness yoga, psycho education, or mindfulness yoga, psycho education, nutrition, and community building. You don't get that all in the typical rehabilitation environment, and you're talking this long term care, which is nearly non-existent in any medical realm. When you decided to focus on those five pillars, what attracted Kevin, Adam, yourself, and everybody else involved with Love Your Brain to pick those pillars? Because it's beautiful. It's so
Mm.
cool because it's not, like, hey, here's some medication or here's some more learning exercises. This is groundbreaking work to help people in the long term.
Mm. Thanks, Evan. Yeah, I think a few things. The medical system is terrific at keeping people alive. I mean,
Hmm.
thank goodness that acute care and the amazing clinicians who work so hard and scientists that try and bring new methodologies for keeping people alive. And then it's just not set up to offer, as you were saying, long-term support that evolves with the ever-changing impacts of brain injury. So for us, a few things happened early days. Kevin found his way into, so about 4 years after his accident, had transitioned back home, was, yeah, trying to kind of pick up the pieces and figure out what a life of purpose looked like, and found his way into a yoga class actually through a new romance he was having.
Love
And
that.
yeah, and it was really life-changing for him. It kind of met a few different needs all at once. It allowed him to regain a sense of physical capability. As an athlete, he derived so much sense of himself by being physically like engaged and confident. But it also layered on a mental component. So it gave him practices and tools to look at the nature of his mind. What were the thought patterns that were coming up? What are the ones to pay attention to versus maybe to pay attention to something else? So the agency in understanding our mental patterns. And then the social piece. So as you were saying, the community connection, I mean, listeners here, when you're feeling um, when you're not in a good place, when you're around people who validate you, who see you, who give you no pressure other than showing up as you are, how
Mhm.
much medicine that can be. So that ended up being kind of the root for us of how we could think about programming that brought in that modality in a very secular way, but also in a scalable way. So there's yoga studios all across the world. And we at the original founding of Love Your Brain had a goal of creating a yoga program that was free, tailored for people with brain injury and caregivers, that was available in all 50 states and at the
Mm.
time 10 Canadian provinces, to really build a community center rooted in this mind-body practice that could help, yeah, build a sense of connection, but also tools and practices that people could bring home and apply in their daily life when they were feeling, frustrated by not remembering where they put their keys.
Yeah.
Yoga has practices to find a way to pause, regulate yourself, that helps collect your cognitive capabilities to then make clear decisions. So, anyways, yoga was a big piece of this and mindfulness. So, Adam, when he took his year off to support Kev, at some point he realized he needed to actually get some space and distance from the dynamic of their relationship
Mm.
and kind of find a new way of relating to Kevin, less in this kind of caregiver um, role and more kind of more back to being peers and brothers. So he
Mm.
went on this big trip, found his way in a meditation center that taught a style of meditation practice that's quite intense. It was a 10-day silent meditation retreat. You meditate from 4:30 in the morning to 8:30 at night, and it's all about paying attention to sensations in your body. And what it helped reveal to him was a lot of the barriers to the friction points to how he was relating to his brother were really from how he was layering on expectations for Kevin to return to who he once was.
Mm.
So meditation allowed him to see more clearly the nature of his mind and then be able to work more skillfully with it to rebuild a more loving, compassionate relationship with his brother. So that kind of got added in. And then nutrition and psychoeducation also became just central um, for various reasons, but I think the education piece. So, this point about recovery and resilience. So, we do a lot of education about the science of resilience, and that term has become more and more mainstream in a good way. But I think sometimes it might be unclear what resilience really means and why we think it's so valuable in the brain injury space. And I'm curious to hear your experience with this, Evan, is there was a point for Kevin where focusing on recovery was really important. It was motivating for him. He wanted to get back to snowboarding professionally. He wanted
Mhm.
his life back in the way that it was. And then at some point, he realized that wasn't possible. And how hard that is to reckon with, but also how much freedom and progress comes when you do. So this switch of recovery in a lot of ways has an orientation backwards, like returning to how things once were. Resilience is much more forward oriented. So it's being able to adapt well to adversity and find a way forward. And we all have inherent resilience, and there's many different facets of it. We use actually a model of resilience from two researchers, two psychiatrists in the VA, Stephen Southwick and Dennis Charney. They wrote this really fascinating book called so it's called Resilience, the Science of Mastering Life's Greatest Challenges. And they interviewed many people who had experienced complex trauma and found 10 factors that the most resilient people embodied. So, for instance, some of those include altruism. So, people who are able to kind of give back, uh, embody an ability to kind of move through hardship. Uh, this mindset of realistic optimism, which means if you expect challenge, you're realistic that challenge will happen, but you still have an optimistic approach so you can find some workaround or other way of approaching it instead of getting bogged down. Facing fears, so seeing your fears as a springboard for learning instead of something to shy away from. Community is also a central one when you have strong sources of support and a sense of belonging, how fortifying that is. So there's 10 of these factors in all of our programming. We Most of our program is either 6 weeks or other lengths, and the themes of resilience are educated in each of those throughout each of the curricula. I know I'm kind of talking a lot here, but I think hopefully that gives you a little flavor of some of the why and the what and the how.
A little flavor. This was like eating a Neapolitan ice. I'm getting all the flavors. Like, this is awesome. I Taking a quick pause from today's episode, people have been asking about the hats and shirts that I wear on all of these podcasts. They're also asking where they can find my memoir. You can check everything out over at toroandtides.com. Again, that is toroandtides.com. My memoir, Forgetting to Remember, is also available on Amazon. That dives deeper into my own brain injury recovery journey. Alrighty, back to the episode. This is why I love these conversations. I'm taking notes while you talk because the short-term memory, but this is a learning experience for me as well, as long as our other listeners, because you touched on so many different things that I've struggled with one that
Mm.
you mentioned, and you did ask for my take on it, and I love that
Mhm.
you did. So recovery versus resilience. I've always struggled with the word recovery, always, where
Mm.
it's like, oh yeah, my story of recovery. And I I mentioned this in my book a little bit, but darn it, I wish I had this conversation with you before because I couldn't find the correct word for it. Because it's recovery, like you said, means getting back to where
Mm.
you once were, right? Is that kind of what you said?
Mhm.
Okay, thank goodness. That's what my notes said.
You got
But
it.
resilience is being forward oriented and adapting well to adversity. A brain injury is incredibly full of adversity. I mean, the daily complications and challenges, and we see this across the board, right? So many people that have come onto the show talk about the adversity that they face and, a good day versus a bad day. And where I always lean on to those good days or good moments is, hey, you got out of bed. Like, that's a victory in itself. And I think that
Mm.
can fall under resiliency. You're adapting to this new adversity. And oh, that is just so well said because medical professionals, hey, this is what recovery is going to look like. This is what recovery is going to look like. And that's not, because recovery for me would be getting back into sales
Mm.
or journalism. But resilience for me, adapting to this new life, this new adversity, is starting my own business where I can set my own hours because I'm limited on what I can do. And this podcast, this gives me a flavor or a taste of what I once used to do. But again, it's on
Mm.
my own time. Like, that's
Mm.
that's part of this resiliency, and that's so cool. And the book, please mention the book again because one, I want to get it. It's the resiliency, the science of mastering life's greatest challenges.
Yes, you
Okay,
got
this is a homework assignment for all of our listeners. Audiobook that bad boy. I can't really read
it.
that much anymore because it hurts my head, but that, I feel like, again, it's built into your pillars of what this company does. And for anybody to learn more about resiliency, everybody that has a brain injury is resilient as hell, I think. And
Totally.
anybody in daily life, like, we all go through challenges, but
Mm.
that is such a beautiful word to use. I am no longer saying recovery because you're so correct. Resiliency, that's huge. Okay, so let's speak on resiliency, right? We're talking about the outcomes of the participants that work with Love Your Brain. Now, it's we're not talking about the clinical, successes, but in terms of the quality of life and identity, are you seeing a shift through the individuals that come and buy into your program, like really commit themselves to working with the tools that y'all give them?
Yes. And uh, where to start? I think a few things because, as you mentioned, brain injury is so complicated. It impacts, I mean, it's not just a medical condition. I mean, it's a human. It impacts all aspects of our lives. That when people come through Love Your Brains programs, it's a bit of meeting them where they're at and what are the things that they want to kind of work on and deepen mentally, physically, and socially. But I think a few common threads happen. So that insight that life, you can feel kind of two things at the same time. So there can be a sense of loss and sense of
Mhm.
grieving of how things aren't going to go back exactly to how things once were. And still, there's a sense of possibility and agency that, like, your story captures that beautifully. You're not going to go back, you didn't go back to sales, you didn't go back to journalism, and you still found what energized you about those two dimensions of your life in a new way. And kind of tapping people into that inner sense of trust that they can meet this new kind of set of cards that life has dealt them internally through like these inner resources of believing in oneself, tools when things, patterns, we all have different patterns that can be challenging for ourselves. Like, for instance, I sometimes feel anxious in new social settings. And so, how to bring in tools that help kind of regulate the nervous system so that you can then act in a way that aligns with your values. So I
Mm,
think that's like the big thing that happens with people who come from our programs. Like, A, they feel, I finally feel understood. What I'm experiencing is real, and it matters. So there's
mhm,
first that like, and then it's a sense of, okay, life can both have things that are hard, but also I have the sense of kind of inner agency to be able to meet that. And
mm,
it comes from being connected to community, using mindfulness practice to understand, yeah, where are those negative thought patterns that are telling us a story that may not be true? Thoughts are thoughts, thoughts aren't facts. But we have conditioning, and after brain injury, those ruminating thought patterns become amplified even more.
mhm,
So, how to kind of disrupt them with different tools that we give, like setting intentions or different kind of somatic practices like noticing your feet on the floor that takes your attention out of your thought cycle into your body and brings you into the present, and then you can have more space that, oh, is that thought pattern that I'm like, I'm not doing good enough. How do I want to handle that instead of just
mhm,
fusing with it?
mhm. Man, I wish y'all have been around for 10 years.
Yeah, we just had our 10th anniversary last year. Yeah.
Congratulations, congratulations. I wish. So I've been resilient for 6 years, right? Since my accident. I wish, I so wish I knew of y'all before this long stretch, because even just this conversation we're sharing for the last 20 minutes has been incredibly impactful on how I'm now looking at the way I've approached life for this journey, where I'm super critical of myself. I'm proud of the stuff I did or have done, but it's never enough for me, which I think is the athlete in
Mm,
me, where I'm competitive and I want to always excel and do better. And when that comes with the business or the podcast or the book, it's like, okay, what's next? What's next? And I think from what I'm understanding from you, and it's kind of taking a breath and finding your footing and grounding and saying like, hey, what I'm doing is great. Like this is enough right now. Like embrace the successes that you're having in the moment. And you're doing good, man. Where it's instead of me like bashing on myself and saying, well, you know, you need to write another book, or you need, I don't know. That sounds really silly, but mindfulness is so important when it comes to this life with a brain injury, because
Mm,
it's easy to dig yourself into a deep hole of depression or anxiety. And I've seen therapists for all this stuff, and they give me exercises to do and stuff to work with, and but it is it's a continued practice that you need to work on and be cognizant of that. Where you said, it's hold on a second, like let that negative thought pass, and just release it. One of the best things that I heard from a therapist is intrusive thoughts. They're really bad in the beginning of my journey, and they said, and this kind of mimics what you just mentioned, is it's like a cloud. You can recognize it, but let it go away. That's not you. That's not your identity. And it's
mm,
huge because it's so easy to get wrapped up in what you're
mm,
thinking and just continue to spiral. And that's not healthy for yourself. That's not healthy for your friends or your family, because they can feel that. They can sense that. Where if you're in a dark or somber mood. So I love that that's something you teach your
mm,
the other brain injury survivors. And this is a call of challenge for some of our listeners, and I want you to help me with this, where they might be hearing some of the stuff that y'all offer, and maybe they're too proud or too stubborn, like, what? No, yoga, mindfulness, no way, I don't need that. Like,
mm,
I'm seeing a doctor and I'm taking this or I'm taking that, and that's not working, and this isn't working either. My life just sucks. Like, I don't want to see anything, I don't want to work with anybody. But try to speak to that audience right now
mm,
if you can. I know that's a tough like pitch, but I know people like that. But I also know that they could greatly benefit from doing stuff like this because it's a different approach.
mm. It's such a valuable question because we talk about this not infrequently also at Love Your Brain too, is how much is the language of what our programming encompasses, um, not landing with certain people based on maybe misperceptions of what yoga and mindfulness are or aren't. So when I think about this, and we offer some of these programs in clinical settings, the way that I think about it is if you're looking for a space where you can connect with people who understand but also challenge you. I mean, people share different stories that give new insights and perspective. So not just I think that's one of the beautiful things about our programming is we create spaces where people feel like vulnerability is a strength. Like even you just sharing, I had early in my days a lot of intrusive thoughts. Like that's for someone else to hear that who's experiencing that is like that like sigh of like, oh, finally. Like I'm not
Hmm.
alone in this. Something's not wrong with me. This is just a pattern that's come from my brain injury, and there's ways to work with that.
Hmm.
So I think if you're looking for a space where you can be really real with what's hard and what's also where there are sources of joy. And
Hmm.
if you're looking for ways to work with attention, if you're uh, if there's challenges with paying attention, or if you're feeling overwhelmed or kind of anxious, different practical tools and skills for working with that you have in your own body. And also ways to move in a way that rebuilds a sense of like steadiness and agency in your body. Because often people who have a brain injury, when they want to go back to playing sports or activities, it's different. I mean, balance challenges, vestibular challenges, but we know movement is so important. So I'd say our programs don't they're very secular, and it's really about kind of the skills and connection that you get from them.
I love that. Yeah, yeah,
How
yeah.
does that
Sorry, just
land?
soaking it in. Yeah, I mean that is so important, and I really hope our listeners tune into that, because I know some people are stuck and they don't know how to become unstuck. And there's fear, right? There's reservation, There's, no longer optimism. Their glass is not even half full, empty now. But it's taking that leap of faith and being vulnerable, like you said, and willing to give it a shot. And that community that you also offer as well among these other things is that can also help somebody become unstuck, which I think
Mm,
is a beautiful thing.
totally. Totally. Yeah.
In regards to, we've talked about brain injury care, right? And you've mentioned this a little bit as well with the story of Love Your Brain, where the brain injury care is still falling short. I mean,
Mm.
aggressively falling short. Sure, like you said, they're great at saving lives. You have the acute inpatient care, and then they wash their hands, they say best of luck, and walk you out the door. So somebody that has left that inpatient rehab and cannot find the resources that they need, what's the best way to find Love Your Brain, or to reach out to somebody to get a better understanding of how they can find a program near them?
Yeah, so we serve, I'd say, about 10,000 people a year in all 50 states of the US. And the best way to learn more about us is to come to our website, which is loveyourbrain.com. We also have different social media presence, but there's always a program that's open, and all of our programs are free, to your point, with insurance caps. I mean, the medical, the financial toll of ongoing medical support needs is astronomical. So we do a lot to make sure our programs remain free and are offered year round. So if you come to our website, Love Your Brain Mindset Online, that's one of our 6 week mindfulness, yoga, and psychoeducation programs where, yeah, it's basically like a peer support group on steroids. You can think about it that way. They're facilitated by experts in trauma-informed mindfulness. Our curriculum is really rooted in the science of resilience and growth mindset. Most people have lived experience of brain injury, so it's really centering that experience. So that's offered year round. We also offer retreats. They're holistic health retreats where people come to kind of deepen and get outside of their daily rhythm to deepen skills in, paying attention, self-kindness, accessing brain health nutrition, amazing meals, delicious meals, and again, like a really deep sense of unpacking what life is like now through storytelling and
Mm,
shared understanding. So those are in Maine, Colorado, Arizona, and now Oregon. And yeah, we would love to have you all be part of our community, and I'm sure the listeners here would contribute a lot to the direction of what we do too.
hmm hmm Well, look, listeners, you got no excuse now. All right, they're all across the U.S. and then these retreats. Well, West Coast, East Coast. There's so many opportunities. Hey there. Have you learned about Plasticity Lab? No, you haven't? Look, you already got your phone out. Why don't you go to the App Store and download it? My app, Plasticity Lab, is free. It's right here. See it? Look at it. Cool. Again, it's called Plasticity Lab, and it gives you daily exercises for your brain. I built it, and I guarantee you're going to love it. All right, back to the episode. Kyla, as we close out this segment, what's one last message you would like to leave with our listeners?
Hmm. Now we all know hardship is well, that hardship can be such a springboard for insight and growth, and being immersed with a group of people who get that and are willing to lean into that space, the possibility of each of us is completely unknown.
Mm,
So hope you can trust yourselves just a little bit more to lean into that space.
trust yourself. That is key. Kyla, thank you so much. Y'all, this was Love Your Brain on Brain to Brain. Now, I just want to add my 2 cents real quick. One thing that really stood out to me on this episode, it's resiliency, not recovery. And if you're listening right now and you feel stuck, just know you're not alone and stay resilient. Keep going, y'all. Thank you for joining us on this episode. We'll see you on the next one.